Hello and welcome back to this downfully dualistic crusade. This video is going over the titles I picked up in Indicator's latest site sale, which is, as I said in the video I made of sale recommendations, is really the best time to stock up on titles from the British Blu-ray label, which I think is really the best boutique label in the world for a lot of different reasons, but on a title-by-title basis, I don't think anyone has the same level of quality in every release across the board in both the attention to the films themselves and also the technical side of Blu-ray releases and UHD releases now as well. This is, of course, talking about artwork and packaging design, but also getting into the extensive special features they do for every release, but their commitment to the technical standards of a physical media release are such that I don't think anyone quite matches the level of effort and commitment they put into every single release, right down to the extensive booklets, the extremely well done mastering on every title, regardless of if it's a new master or not, the level of commitment they have in presenting alternate versions when they are available, alternate title sequences, and even creating subtitle tracks for a lot of films that they are not provided with, and taking the time to actually sit down and do that very admittedly tedious thing, but to actually make sure that the subtitles are actually good, and if they're not, make them yourselves. That takes a lot of commitment. So I don't think anybody quite has that same level, which is why I'm so thrilled to be able to support them, and why this is the one label where I will much more be glad to try some blind buys and some titles I've never even seen or have only sort of barely heard of, because they really do focus on trying to get a spotlight shown on titles that have sort of gotten swept under the rug, and they're off a lot of people's radar. And that's something the Indicator really does extremely well, is sort of put these films into a sort of spotlight. So hopefully they are either rediscovered or discovered for the first time and actually discussed. And that is why it is so important they are backed up with such wonderful supplemental sections, hours upon hours of extras per film, almost every time. And that only furthers the discussion on these films that, again, have been sort of swept under the rug of time in cinema discussion. So every time the sale rolls around, I do order more than I intend to, and my cart at the start of the sale is horrifying because it's so massive. But it really is beneficial to hit that free shipping threshold for those of us here in the US, because yes, 200 pounds is a bit expensive when you do the currency conversion. But you're getting free shipping, and their shipping is expensive because it is from the UK, but it is extremely beyond fast shipping. FedEx International with the best packaging from any label I've ever experienced. This was no exception, because as you can see behind me, I ordered so many titles that came in 2 boxes. My wallet hates me. But anyway, if you can sort of save up and wait for these sales, it really is beneficial, because you can actually start getting titles for, well under $10 when you average them out. And some of these averaged out to even less than that. So a lot of times it feels like they're actually giving away titles, particularly the special editions and box sets. And when you start looking at it, some of these work out to anywhere between $4 and $6 per film, per title. Some of the limited editions and box sets were even marked down to a substantial degree. So they really are giving away these releases in these sales. And also they do start having titles go out of print, because they're limited before they sell out, and then they come back a little while later as standard editions. So a lot of titles do go into low stock and get updated with the inventory numbers, and they do sell out. So I did pick up a few simply because they were going out of print, and they just looked really interesting, and they were also extremely inexpensive. And I had some Indicator site points I had never used. And that's another thing. They do have a rewards point system, and once you make a couple orders, you start building up a nice little amount of points, and you can get 10 pounds off or maybe 20 pounds off of your order, which helps. And then of course you add back on more Blu-rays to get that free shipping again. and that makes your dollar go much further. So that's why I always encourage people who are interested, especially if you're here in the US and you're having to import them. It's really best to stock up during these sales, and they usually run 2 a year. So I guess the next one will be probably sometime around October, I think is when they usually do it. But anyway, I went a bit further than I was originally because I had forgotten I had some points I had never used. So I got more discs. So to start with the limited editions and standard editions, and then go through the box sets afterwards, these are all in the spine order. So this is also including a lot of titles that I've actually never seen before, and they were, again, in the sale, and some were going out of print, and I had points to use, so I decided to mix in a couple blind buys because they just looked so interesting, and I have to fight the urge to not order every disc I don't own in the Indicator catalog usually, because I have problems and they're so good. So it's like I can go without things for another month. Why not? I can get more discs. So to start with Spine 125, this one was hitting low numbers. This is Bellman and True from Handmade Films, a crime film, and you say crime film and Handmade Films, and of course I immediately think of The Long Good Friday, and that is what this film is apparently compared to, so I just felt it was a no-brainer. It's loaded with extras as usual from Indicator, and this has been on my watch list. I've just never actually gotten to see it, and it was hitting those low numbers, and it was really cheap for one of their limited editions with booklets, so this was a no-brainer for me. Why not open them on camera? I have problems. So here we have the wonderful, typical thick Indicator booklet, lovely disc label, and complete with nice reversible art as well. Then Spine 191, which is another of their limited editions, but this one is really important because this is the only release of the longest known version of the film. But this is the 1962 film Eve, directed by Joseph Losey, with the incredible Jean Moreau and Stanley Baker. I've never gotten to see this film, and I knew that there were different versions, and it had a whole history of being cut apart. So I knew Indicator had done this release, which is a full loaded special edition, and it includes multiple cuts of the film, including a 2K scan of the longest known version, which is 2 hours 6 minutes, but it also includes the original European cut and an alternative slightly shorter cut at 108 minutes as well, and a ton of extras. So this was one of, I think, the most important titles you could pick up in the sale. Not only is it a limited edition with beautiful booklet and artwork and reversible art with alternate title, of course, but this includes the longest known version of the film and multiple cuts. So it's one of those releases Indicator has done that really is sort of, saving a film from the edit heap of being only available in cut down versions. So since I'd never gotten to see this before, I was like, well, I need to actually see it properly on the Indicator release with the extended proper version. Spine 194 is the really fascinating Buffalo Bill and the Indians, or Sitting Bull's history lesson. This is a revisionist Western with Paul Newman from Robert Altman. It's a fascinating sort of experience, especially if you're a big fan of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which I think may be Altman's best picture. It's hard to pick just one, but I'm a Western geek, and I also love revisionist Westerns, and this one is a particular... it's sort of got an oddball flavor to it. Probably the closest thing you might be able to compare it to is maybe Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, also starring Paul Newman, that John Huston made, revisionist Western based on a John Milius script. And of course that changed heavily from Milius' script, but that's probably the closest comparison I could maybe sort of make in terms of tone. But this is really interesting because it has 2 cuts of the film. It has the original longer director's cut, and then the shorter, what it's termed, I believe, the producer's cut, which is 19 minutes shorter. It also preserves the original color timing of the film. This, like a number of John Huston films, does play around with the color timing to try to give a sort of antique flavor, and that was not always implemented on prior video releases or even other print releases of the film, like the John Huston films that tried that famously, where he would battle Technicolor, he and Oswald Morris on Moulin Rouge, and even more so on Moby Dick. So There's another John Huston connection. But this is loaded with extras in addition to both cuts of the film with the color timing preserved. Beautiful, thick indicator booklet. And, of course, lovely reversible artwork. I think the art on this is really well done, of course. And for a film like this, you want something that resembles an old handbill advertisement, which is what they did beautifully on this. Next is Spine 195, which is Moscow on the Hudson, which is also starting to hit lower numbers. This is the lovely limited edition from a brand new 4K scan from Sony. I've always been a gigantic fan of Robin Williams' more dramatic performances, and I have not seen this in an extremely long time. I remember liking it, and I was happy that it was actually coming from a 4K master, which was surprising. You wouldn't think that Sony would have jumped on to this film over other catalog titles, so that's really surprising for them to tackle. And of course, it's not just an underrated Robin Williams dramatic performance. It's underrated because it was made by Paul Mazursky, who is always underrated. And I'm really excited to look at this again on this lovely new 4K master presentation with the usual lovely indicator extras, wonderful limited edition booklet, and of course, beautiful reversible artwork. Next is Spine 196, which is a title I've wanted to get before, but there's always so many you have to pick and choose. But this was hitting low numbers and then did sell out, so I was glad I was able to get it before it did, because I think this is actually quite underrated. I'm happy Indicator did it. It's not a perfect film, but I really enjoy revisiting it, and there's a lot of sort of atypical elements for what is a seemingly straightforward romantic thriller of the 80s, and that's Jagged Edge, which was directed by Richard Marquand from a Joe Eszterhas script. It's sort of following in the trend that I guess got started by Lawrence Kasdan when he made Body Heat in 1981, which is basically an updating. A lot of people call it a Double Indemnity remake, and it's sort of a spiritual successor in a lot of ways, and that sort of jump-started a whole new sort of, some people might call it the erotically charged thriller. This sort of is following in that similar vein, but again, it sort of takes some interesting left turns. It does have atypical elements, but the two key factors I think it really has going for it, besides the wonderful lead performances, you've got Jeff Bridges and Glenn Close, and then a wonderful Robert Loggia supporting performance. But the two real factors I think that set it apart even further is it's directed by Richard Marquand, who most people today know only for Return of the Jedi, but he'd also done similar work before Jedi and Eye of the Needle, which was actually the film that weirdly was what put him on George Lucas's radar for directing Jedi, which nobody understands why that led to that. But anyway, so if you know Eye of the Needle, there is a little bit of that feeling here. There's a little more poignancy than what you would expect from an outright thriller. The other is it has an absolutely gorgeous John Barry score, and being a John Barry fanatic, and since he is my favorite composer, I really wanted to get this and revisit the film in HD and his score. And of course, I have the film on Laserdisc too, and I even really love the poster artwork, which they have kept here. But this has wonderful, as usual, indicator extras. It's a Sony HD master, so I believe it's the same thing we've seen turn up here, but of course, given the deluxe indicator treatment with a maxed out bit rate, great encoding, and the lovely extras. And in particular, being a giant John Barry nerd, I would be lying if I said a gigantic reason why I purchased this was that it has the incredible David Huckfell doing one of his score pieces like he does on all the Hammer releases, but he's talking about John Barry, and I'm like, I wanted to purchase this disc just because it has David Huckfell talking about John Barry. And because if you've never seen one of his pieces before, they are, I think, the best supplemental features that have ever been made about film music, because the details he goes into about the actual structure of the compositions and the composer's work and their history and how it ties into the film, absolutely beautiful, and I could watch them for days. So I'm just super excited to see him talking about my favorite composer, John Barry. So that was another reason why I had to grab this. And again, this is now unfortunately out of print. So you won't get the lovely booklet and reversible artwork in the standard edition, but that will come out pretty soon, and you will still be able to get the same wonderful disc contents. And the reversible art is pretty much just the poster art without the indicator logo on it. So you will pretty much just be losing out on the booklet, but the disc contents will be the same, and this is the best release of the film to date on any home video format. Then Spine number 206 is one of the more obscure and, I guess you would say, deeper cut films of Peter Sellers' career that Indicator has done. So this is the 1970 film Hoffman, which I've never actually seen. I've only read about it, and this is one of at least 2 Sellers films that Indicator has now done, loaded with new extras. This is actually a brand new 4K negative scan that is actually done by Indicator. So this is exclusive to their release, and this is also one of the titles that they do have worldwide rights to, so you can actually purchase this here in the US. I'm really excited to see this because I know it's definitely more out there, and it has a very dark plot setup, which I'm, again, not having seen this, I'm not sure how far it goes with that, but I know it's one of the much more obscure Sellers films that just did not have a lot of discussion or especially a lot of video history behind it. And of course, with the limited edition, you get the lovely booklet and wonderful reversible artwork. Next at Spine 215 is a release I had to pick up, being a big Bud Bodeker fan, is 1951's Bullfighter and the Lady. This is a newer Indicator release, but extremely important. Just like Eve, this includes multiple cuts of the film, including the significantly longer director's cut, which clocks in at over 2 hours. The theatrical cut, which is also included here, only runs about 87 minutes. So this is a film that you've only been able to see beforehand in a really butchered and severely cut down state. I've only seen it once before, and it was that very cut down version. This was a preservation done by UCLA, and again, both cuts are included along with substantial extras, but really important is their inclusion of Bodeker's actual final film, which was an autobiographical film he made, I believe, about his later years and his retirement and his raising of horses. So you have an entire additional feature here in addition to both cuts of the film and all the other extras, and it's really special because it was the last thing he ever did cinematically, and of course autobiographical. And I always find those sort of autobiographical things or documentaries where the individual is a participant and also, you basically doing the narration. I find those really fascinating, just like the pieces that Howard Hawks did very, very late in his life, for example. So this one is one of the very stuffed Indicator releases. Of course, this is the limited edition with lovely artwork, lovely booklet, and a really nice attention-grabbing reversible artwork cover. Next is 217, which is the limited edition of A Soldier's Story, directed by Norman Jewison. This is a very underrated film that I have not seen in a good number of years, and I had been wanting to rewatch it, actually, and then Indicator came out with their release, so this has just been one I've been really wanting to get, and it was starting to get into low number territory. This is the new 2K scan. It's Sony held, so Sony, I guess, did a new 2K scan. This is loaded with extras, and if you've never dug further into Jewison's filmography, you're doing yourself a disservice because he is truly underrated. And for my money, this does kind of set, at least I think, a chunk of the sort of foundation for what would come later in A Few Good Men. I think there is a lot of sort of, well, I think there's a good deal of similarity between the two films. And there were more films coming out especially in the 80s into the 90s about sort of interpersonal conflict within the military. So I guess you could say that this sort of goes all the way back to at least the Caine Mutiny in 1954. And if you've never seen this film and you really like films that are about investigations inside the armed forces, I guess. I don't know what the exact genre would be, but if any of that sort of rings a bell, this is definitely a must-see and extremely well done. Of course, lovely Indicator booklet. They always have a photo of the director on the back, which I always truly appreciate. Again, I think Jewison is a incredibly underrated talent who is not somebody he's not somebody you can pigeonhole as a particular director. He always focused more on story, and so he wound up doing pretty much every genre imaginable. And of course, this release also has really striking reversible artwork. And if I haven't sold you on this picture yet, just keep in mind we're talking about the same director behind the landmark In the Heat of the Night. So that speaks volumes. And this is also the same guy who could, just the year before that film, make The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. So to say that he has incredible range is an understatement. Next is Spine 220. This is another one I wanted to pick up ever since they announced it. I'd just been meaning to get to it. This started to hit low numbers as well. It's the limited edition of Geronimo, an American legend. This was directed by Walter Hill in 1993 from a John Milius script. This is prime material for Indicator. Talking about films that should be discussed and sort of flew under the radar. Well, here you go. This is a real thinking man's picture. This is a film you would never in a million years get made today, in terms of its really an intelligent film about people in history and how everything bad that happened was essentially due to a breakdown in communication and people not being able to actively understand each other, which is something that's a problem that's never left us. So this is a fascinating film, beautifully shot, beautifully put together. It is maybe a bit too ponderous. It's not a perfect film, but it's a film with so many great ideas and a film about actual human beings that it's just amazing it ever got made in the first place. I know John Milius was not a fan of how the film turned out because it was rewritten from his original script. So basically, this is a very interesting sort of blend of you can feel John Milius's fingerprints still in there, if you know his type of storytelling and his intense fascination with history. And you can also feel Walter Hill in there if you know Walter Hill's other films, particularly in the 90s. And he made this before he went and did Wild Bill with Jeff Bridges in 1995, which sort of, I think, doubles down on a lot of the trying to put intelligence into the Western and be very philosophical, even if the eventual film doesn't quite work from a narrative point. I still admire that film, but Geronimo is a stronger film, even though I don't think it's necessarily perfect. It's a film I still admire, and it's one that definitely makes you think afterwards for quite some time. And it's also, again, one of those films you see it and it's like, how the hell did they ever get this made by a studio? Because this is an intelligent movie. It's almost in a sort of way, I'd say, 1 foot in that sort of philosophically minded revisionist Western, maybe sort of spearheaded by films like Outlaw Josie Wales, but very akin to what you see in Walter Hill doing Wild Bill later in the 90s, and the other foot probably in a film more like Ozana's Raid, although this film is nowhere near as visceral as that film is, which if you've seen my review of it, I could babble on about how great that film is, but that's the sort of vibe that you find in Geronimo, which again is an incredible film for its era and amazing it ever got made. It's a fascinating film to come back to, and I'm so happy that Indicator has done a beautiful release of it, loaded with supplemental features. And this, of course, is the new remastered HD master. This is the best release to own because what we finally got here was just a pretty much a rather bare bones release, and this, of course, is the limited edition with beautiful booklet, lovely images, and gorgeous reversible artwork. The other thing about this film that makes it even more important, if I haven't already sold you on it by this point, this has one of the great sound mixes of the early 90s, and that's saying a lot because this was the digital sound boom when all of the digital sound formats started coming out and trying to battle each other for dominance, and sound mixers had a whole new toy box to play with. So the early to mid 90s is really a sort of gold rush for sound designers getting to play with stuff. And even at this time, when a lot of people were still mixing primarily in Dolby Stereo SR and doing matrix audio tracks, this is a film that still to this day has a sound mix that holds up. It's a beautifully mixed film. And that's even talking about the old Matrix stereo track. I have watched this film on Laserdisc several times, and the soundtrack is phenomenal on the LD, and that doesn't even have a 5.1 track encoding. This includes both a 5.1 lossless track in addition to the original Matrix stereo track. So I think this is one of those films that was sort of on the cusp. So I do believe it was released with Dolby Digital, but probably didn't play that way in all theaters, because at this point, a lot of films were still playing in Dolby Stereo SR. And most theaters didn't upgrade to Dolby Digital until, some time later, or they went with DTS, or they went with Bose systems eventually, or they went with Sony's SDDS. And I would think this would have had SDDS at some point, but being Sony. But in any case, this is one of the great sound mixes of the early 90s. So even if you were on the fence about picking up this film and you've never seen it, this is loaded with wonderful supplements. It is a real thinking man's historical Western, and you're just never going to see a film like this made again by a major studio. And the sound mix is absolutely incredible. Next is Spine 239. I had to get this one because I'm a Don Siegel nerd, as of course Madigan with Henry Fonda and Richard Widmark. This is a wonderful, very underrated detective thriller. Being Don Siegel in 1968, this is definitely going to have some of the vibes as a precursor to what he would do in 1971 on Dirty Harry. So if you love Dirty Harry and you love late period Don Siegel, then you'll obviously love Madigan, which has wonderful performances from the pair of leads as well. This has beautiful artwork, just absolutely stunning. This is the limited edition with nice extras. This vaults ahead the standard release we got here in the US, so this is definitely the release to own overall. Beautiful limited edition booklet. Of course, have a production photograph with Don Siegel there. And then here is the reversible artwork, which is, I believe, the cover they used for the Kino Lorber release. So this is an example where I think it's the same master, actually. But the Indicator release vaults ahead with packaging, artwork, booklet, extras, everything. So the Indicator release is the one to go for. Now to jump to the new releases, or the most current releases, which I had to get all 4 of them because all of them were jaw-dropping, oh my gosh, these have my name on it, announcements. So Spine 385 is the 1932 Broken Lullaby from the master Ernst Lubitsch. I mean, what is there to say other than Lubitsch? Beautiful artwork, absolutely gorgeous, loaded with extras. This is a new 2K scan of the film. This is a beautiful release. I cannot wait to watch this and sink my teeth into all of the extras. Beautiful limited edition booklet. Of course, a grand photo of the master himself on the back. If you've never seen a Lubitsch film, to say you are in for a treat does not even begin. I mean, Lubitsch is one of the figures that when you first encounter their work, you fall in love with it immediately, and then you just start to realize just how much of the cinematic landscape that one person influenced. And when you just look at the list of all of his disciples, chief among them being Billy Wilder, is just, to say someone has a cinematic legacy is, that person must be Ernst Lubitsch. And of course, this being the limited edition, we have beautiful alternative poster artwork. So I can't wait to see what this looks like from a new scan. I've seen this film at least once before, but it was a long time ago, and I don't think the print was very good. So I can't wait to see what this new 2K scan looks like. And again, the extras look fantastic. So for Spine 386, it was, of course, fitting that Indicator was able to also release the 1938 Bluebird's Eighth Wife, directed by Ernst Lubitsch and written by Charles Brackett and Billy Wilder. This is where Brackett and Wilder come into the picture really and start to work with the master himself. I really love this film. It's a film that doesn't get discussed very often, and it is a perfect example of Lubitsch's sensibility, but also Wilder's sensibility, and how they were very similar in a lot of ways, and why Wilder was really the primary disciple of Lubitsch's style, but also how they differed. So if you see this film, and you could see another Lubitsch film like Broken Lullaby, or even Shop Around the Corner, other films that Wilder didn't work on, you can see there's some interesting differences while they have many core similarities. This has the beautiful original poster artwork. This is the same master that Kino put out on Blu-ray, which I also have. That has a good commentary, but this vaults ahead with a new commentary and substantial extras in addition to a better encode. So this is, I would say, the release to own of the two. Also has a substantial, beautiful booklet, lovely disc label, beautiful alternative artwork, and of course a cast shot with Lubitsch himself. Spine 387 was a real surprise, a film that has never had a great release and then got dumped out here as I think it's a BDR, just I think it may be a press disc, but it was just sort of tossed out there as an expensive movie only disc. And then comes along Indicator with a special limited edition of State of the Union, which is, for many people, I think, rather plainly the last really good film that Frank Capra would make. This is really the one notable film he makes after It's a Wonderful Life, outside of remaking a lot of past glories under different titles. And those do have their moments, but this is the one that really has gas in the tank, if you will. And of course, it's one of the immortal Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn vehicles, and a film full of political satire. I cannot wait to see what this looks like and dig into the substantial amount of extras. So this is easily the release to own, because here in the US, we just got an overpriced standard movie only disc. This has a wonderful interior, lovely booklet, a shot with Capra on the back, of course, and then really lovely alternative poster artwork. And here is Spine 388, which was the first thing I added to my card and the release announcement that absolutely floored me. This is Indicator's release of a film I have reviewed on this channel in the Kino Blu-ray release. So it's the same universal new scan of the James Whale production, The Kiss Before the Mirror. This is a fascinating pre-code film. Again, I have reviewed it on this channel if you want to already see me babble on about how amazing this film is and how striking it is, even for a pre-code film, and how very European it is in terms of the mindset. This is a film you would think had been made in Europe, and of course was not really a film that the code would like in any way, shape, or form, which is fascinating to then note that to work off his Universal contract and the last days of his contract, that James Whale actually wound up remaking this film as a code-approved vehicle. And it is basically a very completely different animal in terms of tone, though it has flashes of whale flourishes. It is not the film that this is. This is a film I would recommend to anyone. This is a perfect gateway to James Whale outside of his horror films. And if anyone in the cinematic medium's history ever deserved the auteur label, it's James Whale, because the man could do everything or had an opinion about everything and put every ounce of his personal style and thought and opinion into every frame of every film he ever made. And you certainly get it here in The Kiss Before the Mirror, which is just a fascinating pre-code film that I would recommend to anyone. This vaults ahead of the Kino release with a substantial extras package. It is the same master, but this is a far better presentation overall with substantially more extras. So the only reason why the Kino version you might want to hang on to is it does have a pretty good commentary, which again, I did do a review of. This one has everything else in terms of the usual Indicator pluses: beautiful artwork, beautiful reversible alternative poster artwork, beautiful limited edition booklet, complete with a photograph of the man himself, the legendary James Whale. Just the man was a genius, and I've been obsessed with his work ever since I saw Bride of Frankenstein as a kid. And so I cannot wait to revisit this film, check out the beautiful extras, and it's also topped off by a commentary by Nora Fiore, who has become my favorite modern commentator. I love her style and the incredible amount of research she does, so I can't wait to hear her thoughts on this film, because I adore this film. It is, you're not going to get to discuss this film or hear people talk about it outside of something like this, because it is so obscure. So I'm so happy we now have an even better release of it on physical media with even more extras. And hopefully this means that more of the Universal James Whale non-horror films will see similar releases. Kino has released Whales by Candlelight, so I'm like, fingers crossed it can get a similar Indicator release. So I'm thinking they'll probably get to do that as well in a beautiful edition like this. But this was my most eagerly anticipated release of this whole order, and the one I'm watching first. Now to move on to the box sets to close out with, going in spine order. I couldn't resist this one because it was starting to hit low numbers and such a beautiful package. It's Spine 46, the release of the 4K scan on Blu-ray of The Swimmer, the fascinating picture starring Burt Lancaster with this gorgeous packaging, limited edition box artwork with the usual J card. That's just stunning in the usual hard case style. Indicator really went all out with this. This film is getting a UHD release, but it's not going to be as well put together in terms of everything else as the Indicator release, which also has significant special features, reversible artwork. This is the full limited edition, and of course, being one of their boxes, we get not a booklet, but a beautiful hardbound book loaded with imagery, absolutely gorgeous. And I'd been wanting to pick up this release anyway. And of course, the film is getting a release elsewhere on 4K UHD, but it's not going to advance on everything else Indicator put into this. So I really do think this is probably still going to be the release to beat, even though it's not 4K UHD. And who knows, maybe Indicator might get to revisit it later on as a UHD title, since they're now doing UHDs. But that wasn't enough. Of course, they have also included replica fold-out quad posters. So this was a no-brainer, and I knew I would regret it if I missed out on this. This is still, I think, the release to beat, and Indicator's box sets are works of art in the home video realm, and I don't think can ever be missed, really. Now, speaking of blind buys, I decided to go for this one because I've now read about these films and reviews of this set, but this is one something that Indicator really took it upon themselves to save, and of course did the scans themselves. So Spine 138 and 139 is the Pimini Organization box set of the three films Hunted, Assassin, and Moments, all from the same short-lived production company. This is a fascinating slice of British film history, and one that I'm really excited to dig into. These were all done by Indicator as 4K scans from the best surviving film element sources, which they had to piece back together, and then loaded with all brand new substantial special features on all three films, and really giving the royal treatment to these. And I'm really interested to see what these are like, especially, and then to dig into all of the supplements. So everything is in a single case, spread across 2 discs with lovely artwork. And again, this is a substantial amount of extras, so it will definitely take a long while to go through. And whenever you go through an Indicator box set and then you dig in all the extras, it's like you're getting to read a whole film reference book, and you will spend hours digging through and learning more about these films and the people who made them, and this is my sort of catnip. So I was very happy to also pick up this set as well. It's also a limited set, so it will eventually sell out, but has a wonderful Indicator full bound booklet, and of course got Anne Hendry in there, so you automatically have my attention. loaded with stills, of course, brand new wonderful essays, vintage materials, so your usual absolutely excellent indicator book. And we also have some wonderful and lovely printed art cards, so I guess like postcards or lobby cards for the films. These are always a nice touch when they're included, and if you're going to have them, it's nice to have them done well. And of course, this is Indicator, so they are beautifully made. And if I needed any further indication that I might be interested in this set, here's Edward Woodward with a shotgun Get Carter style in a black and white still. So I'm like, yes, I'm in the right place. Thank you. My money was well spent. So I personally can't wait to dig into this set and really see what Indicator has put into the work done and the special features. Then at Spine 156 is another film that I've heard of but never seen, and so this is more of a blind buy, but that's the limited edition release of Scum from 1979. This is a loaded Indicator special edition, gorgeous, striking artwork on the usual limited hard case set, brand new 2K restoration from the original negative, absolutely stuffed to the gills with supplemental features. And of course, we have the limited edition case. Again, so many substantial special features. The interior with the disc. The alternative artwork. The beyond striking bound book included with the release. Lovely stills and design. Substantial vintage materials and new essays on the film's importance, script excerpts, bits of even about the novelization. I mean, this is absolutely stuffed. And if that wasn't enough, again, they have included a poster reproduction. That is just beautifully done. And then the reverse is equally striking. And if that wasn't enough, this was marked down so low. They were giving this away. It only cost, like $7 or $8 in the sale. They are giving away these incredible works of home video material. I mean, that this is a level of quality and commitment you just don't see elsewhere, and that's another reason why these sales are so important. And this will eventually sell out as well. I think it already hit low numbers. If it or it may have actually sold out, I'm not sure, but I know it was getting pretty low, and I just always meant to see this film. So that combined with the substantial amount of extras, I mean, you just see that long text block, and that's plenty of hours of film history right there that Indicator has put together for you. That makes this a no-brainer. And again, they were just giving this away at a ridiculously low price. Being a real Hammer fan, I had to also get Spine 269, which is the limited box of Creatures the World Forgot, which was one of their sort of, for lack of a better term, I think it's usually referred to as the Cave Girl cycle. Started with 1 million years BC, and then when dinosaurs ruled the earth and other films, but this being the sort of third film in that sort of cycle, given the deluxe Indicator treatment. Absolutely gorgeous artwork. I mean, that is just incredible. And with the usual wraparound, loaded with extras, this is very much the same sort of standalone Hammer style for a box set like they did with the Robin Hood and Hammer set, which I also reviewed, and is another must-own Indicator title. So this, just like that, while it's not a full Hammer box set, don't let that fool you, because it's still loaded with materials. So we have original artwork on the case, then the stunning box artwork is on the disc label and on the reverse artwork. 75-page hardbound book in the traditional Indicator amazing style, absolutely loaded with images, texts, essays, vintage materials, so absolutely fantastic. And if that wasn't enough, we get more included art cards. These lovingly produced in high detail. They do suggest, of course, the market the film was aiming for. Yep, they definitely do. These are all publicity stills for the film. So, this is another beautiful Essential Must-Own release. And even if you're not into these films as much as other Hammer films or the horror films, you get to a point where you're kind of so fascinated with the company that you want to know about all their other films and what all the other various crew and other Hammer personnel did. So you will definitely get so much out of this release and the substantial extras. But wait, there's more. Sometimes when you order from their website, they include little bonuses for certain titles. So they included some really beautiful postcards that reproduce lobby cards from the film. So these are wonderfully printed, full-size, thick, hard cardstock. So you could actually mail them, but they're so beautifully done. Why would you do that? And again, these are reproducing original lobby cards. This fellow's not having a very good day, is he? So these are just an example of the really cool little bonuses that Indicator does. And they don't charge for these. And it's only while supplies last, but it's a really cool thing they do. Sometimes it's a poster, sometimes it's postcards, sometimes it's a lobby card. It just depends. So sometimes you'll see little bonuses get added to the website, and they'll just list for the first, X number of orders that purchase this release directly from the website, we will include a nice little thank you item like this. Then Spine 272 is the release I've been so looking forward to. That is the release of The Big Gun Down with absolutely stunning artwork of Lee Van Cleef there. This is like their Columbia Noir boxes with a very bold color, but this has a really nice bold red that just speaks to the badassery of Lee Van Cleef's screen persona and how amazing this release is going to be, because it is from new 2K scans, but presenting not one, not two, but 3 cuts of the film. The original US theatrical cut, the extended US cut, which I think has scenes that were shown in a broadcast TV version, and the full-length Italian version, which is what I will be starting with, because like most Italian Westerns, this film has had a whole bunch of random all-over-the-place video releases and edits and not in the best quality. So this looks to be absolutely fantastic. It is loaded with supplements, 3 cuts of the film, multiple language options, and you really do need to experience different dubs of a lot of Italian Westerns, because some you really need to stick with the original Italian mono. Some, the English dub is better. Some, it's a German or a Spanish dub. It just depends. Sometimes it's a French dub. You never know. But usually one audio track is better than the other. And to have the option to try multiple dubs with or without subtitles and multiple cuts, and specifically being able to see the full-length original Italian version fully restored with this amount of supplements and this amount of care is super exciting. So, of course, we have a beautiful case. This is a bit special because it is a 2-disc affair, because Indicator's not one of those companies that is just going to shove everything onto a single disc and say to hell with compression, because there are 3 versions of the film and many, many extras. They have gone the extra mile to do really good encoding and spread everything out over 2 discs like you should do. So we have the Italian and extended US cut here on disc 1, plus some extras, and then everything else with the theatrical cut from the US is here on disc 2, both having lovely labels that are easily distinguishable from one another, so you don't get mixed up in the dark. Again, substantial amount of extras because we have 2 discs to play with. Beautiful hardbound booklet, absolutely gorgeous imagery, and the traditional Indicator style. I cannot wait to dig into this. It looks absolutely fantastic, and of course loaded with beautiful new and vintage printed materials. And of course we have the fold-out poster. That is a poster right there. I mean, just, oh. So it's no wonder they replicated this for the box artwork. But if that wasn't enough, we have a beautiful alternate poster, a bit more traditional, but still rather nice looking as the reverse. So that is the Indicator Deluxe Limited Edition release of The Big Gun Down. This is without question one of the best home video releases of an Italian Western ever, and I cannot wait to dig into this and, of course, do a full comprehensive review. And then last but certainly not least, Spine 294, which is for the 1940 classic Remember the Night, directed by Mitchell Lyson, written by Preston Sturges. This is a fascinating, wonderful film if you've never seen it before. Perfect, of course, for the holiday season, given the full deluxe limited edition hard case indicator treatment, beautiful box artwork, loaded with supplements. This is a master from Universal, but this should look far better than the last time I saw it, which was, I can't even remember. It's been a long time, so I'm very happy to revisit it on this lovely release. This was a real surprise announcement. I never had any idea that this was on the horizon for this film, but I'm so happy it's here. Beautiful case with the same artwork. Again, the same substantial extras. We have the disc label, but also for the limited edition, the alternative poster artwork. Of course, beautiful indicator hardbound book, and part of the fascination of this film today is, of course, with Barbara Stanwyck and Fred MacMurray in a wonderful, charming film like this, and the whole time all you can think about is Double Indemnity. So if you've never seen them together paired in a film outside of Double Indemnity, that adds an extra sort of spice to this film that was, of course, not intended. But this is a wonderful book, as always. Beautiful new essays and vintage materials. Again, Indicator is unmatched in this area, as with pretty much every area of physical media releases. So any of their limited edition boxes is worth its weight in gold. And of course, a beautiful poster reproduction. Sorry, apologies for trying to fit all of this on camera, which is reversible with the alternative poster image, also beautifully done. So this is another beautiful must-own release of a film, and this is the best release it's ever gotten and probably will ever get. I mean, I never expected this to get this type of deluxe treatment, so this is an extra special treat. I couldn't wait to get my hands on this, just like Big Gun Down and some of the others, so can't wait to dive into this as well. So those are the discs I picked up in the indicator sale for this particular sale here in March, April of 2023. But that isn't all. There is one little extra thing, if that wasn't enough. They always send a really nice printed little catalog. Oh, look. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a preview of coming attractions. I always love their printed catalogs because while they are just very simple and straightforward, showing some of the newer limited editions and new standard edition reprints, they're done really well with gorgeous imagery of some of the new and upcoming releases. And they're just a really nice little thing to have to show your indicator love. And, you know, I like hanging on to these. And so I have a couple of these now, and they're very good about tucking these into sale orders. So I always love little things like this when they're done really well, and it's just a nice little extra, just a little extra thing, but it's done with such care and quality that, it's a nice little bonus, sort of a thanks for ordering. Here's a little nice printed catalog card that you can also put on your shelf and display. So that is what I picked up in this year's indicator sale for March and April of 2023. Again, they will do a sale later in the year, towards the end of the year, like they do each year. So every year, it's usually two sales, one towards the start of the year and one usually October, November at the end of the year. This is the best time to really save up your purchases and go all out and get a lot of stuff for those of us here in the U.S. because the savings are substantial. So if you wait and you sort of stock up on new releases that you want to get and you mix that in with titles from the past month or two and then titles on sale from, much, much earlier and stuff that's going out of stock and then some standard editions and things, you can get a ton of material for very little cost per disc. So while it may be a little daunting seeing, 200 pounds, that is a lot of money. It's about 240 US. But if you wait and save up and you splurge a little bit on one of these sales, you can get anywhere between, depending on how many box sets you're getting and how many new releases versus sale titles and standard editions, you can get anywhere between 20 to 40 films or more, depending on the box sets and the multi-film collections and the multiple cuts and different things. So that breaks down to an absurdly low cost per film or per disc. So just for for these, and I also got more than I originally was going to because I found I still had points I'd never used. So some of these were actually free, which made it even cheaper. So, this broke down to maybe about, only $7 to $8 cost per average per disc, which is insane for the level of quality that's put into these releases and the amount of material and hours of supplemental features that you get and the wonderful artwork and printed booklets and box sets and things. So these savings are substantial. So I do encourage people to really look at these sales as a way to stock up and make your dollar go further while also supporting the incredible work that Indicator continues to do. They are my favorite label in the world because they show the most quality and care every time. Even if it's a film I haven't even heard of, they've gone the extra mile already, and I'm just amazed. So anytime I can support them or pick up more releases, I'm happy to do so. And I did splurge on a couple and mix in a few blind buys this time because I had some points lying around, and there were just so many interesting titles. I really had to struggle to not do what I always want to do, which is just order everything. But still, that's the curse of collecting physical media. You just want to purchase everything. But anyway, I just thought it would be fun to go over my purchases and what I chose in the sale, and hopefully encourage other people to maybe check out some of these titles if you didn't pick them up in the sale or you haven't looked at them yet. Maybe encourage more people to take a closer look at other Indicator titles. So as always, I hope this has been at least somewhat fun and informative to hear me babble on once again about classic films and physical media releases and boutique Blu-ray labels. So as always, do keep supporting boutique labels and studio labels by buying films on disc to help keep physical media and film culture alive. And thank you ever so much for watching.